Welcome to the 7th Planet Broadcasting special series, The Anunnaki, for Season 1, Episode 5. I am your host, Matt LaCroix, and I'm joined by best-selling author and radio personality, Gerald Clark, and truth seekers and ancient ancestral researchers, Krista Clark, Troy Gothard, and Zechariah Lang.
Travel with us from the cloud forests of South America to the pyramids of Mexico, where we search to unlock the true story behind the mighty conquest of the Spanish Empire in search of Aztec and Inca gold.
Is there evidence pointing to Anunnaki influences ultimately driving the Catholic Church in its relentless quest for new territories and their resources, especially land and gold?
Together, we will uncover the truth behind the great conquest of the Americas and see if we can shed light on the real story.
The first stop on our journey takes us all the way to the castles of the Spanish Empire, commanded by the mighty Catholic Church, whose powerful influence at the time had reached nearly every corner of the known world.
Many of these impressive castles still remain today. The Coca Castle was built in the late 15th century by Don Alonso de Fonseca in the province of Segovia and is a striking reminder of the ultimate military power and resources yielded by the church and state. Spain's flag portrays a large double-headed raptor that may symbolize important clues connected to Anunnaki influences spawned in more ancient times.
Does symbology of the eagle and dragon tell a forgotten story waiting to be uncovered?
The Spanish coat of arms also shows a similar representation of the same two-headed eagle, also depicted on the flag.
Notice the strong use of color, red and gold, which may be clues back to their true origins and ancient intentions. Could these symbols be affiliated with Sumer's Anunnaki gods?
Digging deeper into the source of the eagle, we find strong evidence leading back to the iconic Byzantine church's symbolic eagle. The Byzantine two-headed eagle was the official symbol of the Roman Empire and was later changed to the Red Cross of the Christian Church in Turkey and then Europe. Was the bird an eagle or actually a phoenix?
Even today, we still find the symbolic connection back to the eagle and dragon, as seen in various Catholic and Christian churches, often embroiled in gold. These important symbols can be seen on flags, statues, and even currency, and can be traced back to ancient times.
Could the eagle symbology represent sudden death from above? Beastly lord of the air, a fitting image adopted by a conquering culture, spawned by a warring god?
Looking at the common flags and crests represented by the superpowers and elites of the world, the portrayal of the eagle is ubiquitous. Let's retrace the ancestral clues and discover for ourselves the real story of our history and the important links back to the Anunnaki gods.
In 1452, the Catholic Church began issuing papal bulls, which granted rights and privileges in order to promote missionary activity. The American continent was bestowed by God through the Pope upon the Spanish and the Portuguese.
The Spanish Empire, with its grand fleet and almost infinite wealth, was putty in the hands of powerful forces that perpetuated the symbolic mighty eagle in its occluded quest for gold in America, Mesoamerica, and Peru.
What secrets did they really know about the Americas' ancestry and resources? This cover story of merely seeking a new Western spice trade route to India is obviously untrue.
The Catholic Church's casual hand and dark intent are clear retrospectively for the New World conquests. The first Spanish conquest begins with a sailor and explorer named Christopher Columbus, depicted meeting with the Queen of Spain.
Is there perhaps more to this famous story than meets the eye? Was he recruited for a multifaceted mission on behalf of Spain?
Christopher Columbus was an Italian explorer born in 1451 in Genoa. Throughout his life, Columbus had a deep interest in Bible prophecy, and under the leadership of the Catholic Church of Spain, formed an expedition of priests and sailors to fulfill what he believed was his own prophecy in the New World.
The legal agreement document known as the Capitulations of Santa Fe between King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella promised Christopher Columbus rewards for his conquest. If successful, he would be given the rank of Sea Admiral and appointed Viceroy and Governor of all new lands claimed for the Spanish Empire.
The document also revealed that a percentage of any riches that Columbus was able to acquire would be shared directly with the Spanish government. Now Columbus has his greed motive and will make a good agent of theft and destruction.
Zeus gave General Pelias the same prodding to overthrow the king of Thessaly. Enel, Zeus, the Dark Lord, is a master at puppeteering the perception-skewed conscripts of desire throughout the ages.
The material lust for wealth and power always leads to destruction. It is by design. See the 1963 movie Jason and the Argonauts to get an ancient Greek holographic perspective of how Zeus's game works.
Columbus's coat of arms shows how closely he was affiliated with the Spanish Empire and the Catholic Church. The eagle may be lord of the air, but the lion symbolizes king of the land.
Couple a devouring lion's carnivorous nature with anchors indicating naval transportation, a fortified castle for the troops, and the land masses to be conquered, and it just about sums up what happened next.
Christopher Columbus set forth on his naval odyssey, believing his mission to be ordained by God. After all, the Pope, according to the Catholic Church, is God's authority figure on earth.
Columbus's justification for future carnage was to propagate his holy name and his gospel throughout the universe, marking the beginning of the dreadful conquest of the Americas.
Modern history books perpetuate the story that Columbus departed in 1492, searching for a western route to India to participate more directly in the lucrative spice trade route.
This may have been his cover story, given his promised percentage cut for wealth obtained on behalf of the Spanish crown.
The real question is, was he simply a pawn for the church, eager to reach the famed lands belonging to the plumed serpent known as Amaru by the Indians of Peru and later Kukulkan and Quetzalcoatl in Mesoamerica?
Could the establishment of the East Indian trading companies, funded by the church and state, have been used to accomplish many goals on their behalf? Is there more to the real story of Americans than we have been told in history books? Let's follow the evidence and take a look.
Christopher Columbus's flagship, the Santa Maria, can be seen depicted on stamps crossing the Atlantic Ocean, sailing for a new land. It is scornful to see barbarous, thieving pirates commemorated on a United States stamp.
It is no wonder indigenous peoples of America are outraged at the fact that his deeds are celebrated on an official holiday on Pope Gregory's calendar, scheduling holidays for sheeple based on historical deceptions even to this day.
Columbus first reached the island of San Sebastian in the Bahamas on October 12, 1492, where he encountered friendly groups of indigenous people known as the Arawaks. They would not have been so friendly had they known of his true motives, spawned by the devil.
Columbus immediately noticed that the Arawak people were wearing gold ornaments and ordered their immediate capture, taking several of them prisoner.
Columbus and his men demanded that the Arawak people lead him to the source of the gold, and they prodded the local leaders for any information. Columbus wrote this in his journal about the Arawak people on October 12, 1492.
Many of the men I have seen have scars on their bodies. When I made signs to them to find out how this happened, they indicated that people from other nearby islands come to San Salvador to capture them. They defend themselves the best they can. I believe that people from the mainland come here to take them as slaves. They ought to make good and skilled servants, for they repeat very quickly whatever we say to them. I think they can very easily be made Christians, for they seem to have no religion. I could conquer the whole of them with 50 men and govern them as I pleased.
Columbus's attitude is quintessential to the domineering culture that arose, necessitating fortified living conditions for others, according to Professor Diamond, author of Pulitzer Prize-winning book Guns, Germs, and Steel. Is this not the same commissioning-styled event in history that occurred in biblical times as Yahweh Enlil sent the offspring of Abraham to conduct genocide in the Levant?
Here we see the origins of a domineering conquistador culture willing to murder, rape, and plunder any foreigner that is unwary of their destructive and dark aims, symbolized by the carnivorous eagle and lion.
Columbus's personal journal entry and his barbarous actions against the Arawak people reveals the true motives behind the Spanish Empire and power of the Church. The dastardly historical evidence left behind tells a far different tale, depicting Columbus as a barbarian seemingly devoid of a mortal soul, versus the fairy tale we are taught in schools and subsequently celebrate annually as a national holiday in America.
Acquiring vital information during the interrogation of the natives, Columbus sailed south, looking for a source of Caribbean gold in the promised land he had been lustily seeking. His naval travels proceeded along the northern shore of eastern Cuba, before reaching the island of Hispaniola on December 5, 1492, presumed to be the Arawaki source of gold. The image depicts a cross being installed immediately upon landing in Haiti, dressed for the part.
Columbus explored the northern part of the Hispaniola island for a month, traveling all the way to the Bay of Rincon, from where he would eventually depart back to Spain. Along this route, Columbus captured slaves from nearly every tribe he came across, including the Arawak and Siguayos people, as he and his men pillaged and looted the region's wealth in the name of the Spanish Empire.
By the time Columbus returned to Spain, most of the slaves had died from the voyage. These were not the actions of an explorer hero, but rather those attributed to a genocidal enslaving maniac.
Reviewing Columbus's sailing route, coupled with his journal entries and actions, the evidence seems clear that he was not really looking for a Western migration to India as stated, but rather sought out sources of gold and cheap slaves for the Spanish Empire.
Think of all the countless cultures that were subsequently lost in this region due to the slave trade that Columbus helped establish. When following the evidence, the real story of history is often overlaid with shades of gray. This story is soaked in blood, conquest, and indigenous population extortion and subjugation.
Expansion from Columbus led to the furthering of the Spanish conquest of the lands of the eastern United States years later. Millions of native people and cultures were lost from war, disease, and the theft of land. This marked the beginning of a destructive conquest of the entire region known as Amaruca by the Great Eagle of the Church.
With Spain's sights set on fully conquering Columbus's gold-laden lands, they focused a new front west of Cuba in Mexico. Spain desperately needed another barbarous explorer and sailor, for they knew that this was a hostile occupied land with great wealth, especially gold.
The Church of Spain recruited a man named Hernán Cortés, who originated from the Medellin region.
Hernán Cortés was described as a pale, sickly child. He was a little different than the others. Cortés had trouble concentrating in school, and at the age of 16, he left home and wandered the south ports of Spain, becoming consumed by the tales from sailors speaking of gold, Indians, and new lands far to the west.
Cortés set sail for Hispaniola in 1504, where he became a colonist. Within a year, he became the notary of the town of Azua de Compostela near Santo Domingo, Haiti. In 1506, Cortés set his sights higher and took part in a large inland conquest of Cuba and Hispaniola, where he proved himself loyal to Spain and was awarded estate lands and slaves.
After his success in the region, the governor of Cuba, named Diego Velázquez, awarded Cortés the position of secretary and a clerk of the treasury. This was a powerful position and put Cortés on track to become a captain and general in the Spanish fleet. Note the eagle and the lion on his crest. In 1518, Velázquez put Cortés in command of a large expedition to explore and secure the interior of the lands of Mexico for colonization. Cortés sails to the southern tip of Cuba and arrives in Veracruz, Mexico in the year 1519.
Cortés travels inland from Veracruz, Mexico, and after 6 months of negotiating, meets with the leader of the Aztec people, known as Moctezuma I in Tenochtitlan. Cortés arrives in Mexico precisely in the year 1 Reed, the same year that the ancient plumed serpent god was born and later vowed to return.
What did the Spanish Empire and the Church really know about this prophecy and the truth behind it? Was Cortés pretending to be the returning god, Quetzalcoatl, in order to trick the Aztec people to let their guard down?
Cortés saw the power of the Aztec Empire and Montezuma adorned with gold and precious stones, and with greed-driven motives, sought to find out where more gold and treasures may be hidden.
As Montezuma led Cortés and his forces through the city of Tenochtitlan, Cortés became alarmed at the number of warriors present, fearing for their lives. Cortés and his men acted swiftly, taking Montezuma prisoner. During the night, Cortés tried to convert Montezuma to Catholicism, but the Aztec emperor kindly refused.
Cortés demanded all the gold and wealth the Aztec possessed as ransom for Montezuma's immediate release. Montezuma's power and authority was lost as fights and skirmishes began erupting in the capital city. Upon receiving the stated ransom, Montezuma returned to Tenochtitlan, only to be killed by Cortés anyway.
Cortés develops an elaborate plan, combining forces with the rival clan of the Aztec, known as the Tlaxcala people, where they lay siege to the city of Tenochtitlan for 75 days. Cortés and his men managed to block off the important causeways leading into the city and killed anyone who tried to pass.
Cortés effectively cut off the food and water supply to the city of Tenochtitlan for months, causing severe famine and plague to the people. This barbaric act of war led to over 200,000 Aztec people perishing, with half of the deaths being civilians, primarily women and children.
With the Aztecs sick and dying, Cortés storms the capital of Tenochtitlan, leveling it to the ground and pillaging all the wealth of the city.
The Aztecs surrendered to Cortés on August 13, 1521, only 2 years into his campaign. But how could only a few hundred men manage to topple an enormous empire? The answer lies in the precise arrival of Cortés, as well as their collaboration with the Aztec rival tribe, the Tlaxcala people.
Apart from this collaboration, Cortéz would never have been successful in toppling the Aztec Empire. The Tlaxcala culture had been oppressed by the Aztec for hundreds of years and were therefore eager for revenge.
This strategic alliance led to the collapse of the entire Aztec Empire at the capital, Tenochtitlan. This early painting portrays the Spanish and Tlaxcala joining forces. How many countless writings and relics were lost to these barbaric conquests?
The conquering of the Aztec by the Spanish Empire greatly expanded their lands and wealth, but they did not find the large amounts of gold that they had been looking for. The real question was, where was the gold coming from possessed by the Aztec? Spain and the church knew that a significant source of gold to the Americas must be coming from further south. After conquering the indigenous cultures of both North and Central America, Spain next set its eagle sights on conquering the great Inca Empire. Could Peru be the source for the god Amaru's gold, land of the plumed serpent?
The Andes Mountains are the longest continental range in the world, spanning over 4,000 miles, forming the western boundary of South America. The Andes extend from Venezuela in the north all the way to the southern tip of Chile in the south, with heights reaching almost 23,000 feet. This rugged natural north-south mountain barrier was an insurmountable impediment to many early South American explorers.
From the deep rainforest of the Amazon to the snow-capped ridges and glaciers of the Andes, the mighty Inca Empire spanned an enormous territory and influenced thousands of people. At its height, it was one of the largest empires in the world.
Modern scholars trace the Incan culture back to the Peruvian highlands in the early 13th century, but new evidence shows they may be far older than that. The Incan culture possessed in-depth knowledge of monolithic temple building, advanced writing, metallurgy, and road building.
The famous Inca Road stretches for an astounding 25,000 miles and traverses the seemingly impossible terrain of the Andes Mountains, reaching heights of over 16,000 feet. Even today, the road can be traveled with ease and shows remarkable craftsmanship and skill.
Most important megalithic sites from Peru to Bolivia are found along the Inca Road. Many questions still arise about who actually built these ruins and elaborate road systems, as well as their true age. The details and precision seen in the stonework is even more advanced than we can accomplish today with modern technology. The sheer size of the blocks used is staggering when viewed next to another human being. Look closely at the people at the base of the megalithic stone blocks.
Precision stone masonry is evident at megalithic sites in Peru and Bolivia. Who really built these structures, and could they have been linked to ancient Anunnaki bloodlines at Pumapunku and Tiwanaku? When many Incan elders were asked these difficult questions, they replied by saying the structures existed before their ancestors arrived and were built by the gods. Let's look deeper into the Inca culture and search for evidence revealing the truth.
The heart of the Incan Empire was in the country of Peru. Cusco became the military, administrative, and governing center for the Inca. At the height of its power, the Inca Empire stretched for thousands of miles from Ecuador and Peru to Chile and Argentina. With such a vast and advanced culture in South America, it is to be expected that encounters occurred between the Inca, their gods, and peoples of Central and Mesoamerica. The conflict between Viracocha and Kukulkan is one such example.
The earliest Incan god was known as Amaru, which meant the plumed or winged serpent. Who is the reptilian being depicted on a monument in modern-day Lima, Peru? Could the name America actually originate from the land known as Amaruca, land of the plumaged serpent, and not Amerigo Vespucci, as is taught in history?
Researcher William T. Still explains in his writings that America was initially called the land of the plumed or feathered serpent by the ancient cultures of Peru, linked to the name conjugate Amaruca. Perhaps a pressed history possessed by the Inca will help expound the legacy of the winged serpent and its connection symbolically to Anunnaki origins and the true history of America.
In 1923, a Sicilian monk known as Father Crespi traveled to Ecuador from Italy to work and study with the native people. Father Crespi was a trained educator, anthropologist, botanist, and explorer, and was fascinated by the indigenous tribes of the region, especially those found in the upper reaches of the Amazon rainforest on the edge of the Andes Mountains. There, Father Crespi spent significant amounts of time working with the people and improving their lives by introducing science, writing, and improving social conditions. He became trusted and well known by the remote tribes who offered him generous gifts in return for his kindness.
The relics that were given to Father Crespi were said to have been found by the natives in deep caves and lost ruins in the jungle. These relics portray plumed or winged serpent gods and have striking similarities to those found in Mesopotamia thousands of miles away and have puzzled many researchers and historians.
How could it be possible that these relics portraying winged serpent gods match those seen in much earlier cultures halfway across the world in Iraq and Syria? Could this be the Inca god known as Amaru? And is this evidence of Anunnaki influence in South America?
Traveling south, we find spectacular gold relics from Peru that seem to only provide more questions than answers to most modern-day historians. What exactly were the Inca depicting with these strange artifacts, which were entirely designed out of pure gold? Was it perhaps a spaceship from an Anunnaki god that they had an ancient encounter with?
Flight dynamic experts reverse engineered scale models of the Inca gold relics, which achieved successful flight. This seems to prove without a doubt that the Inca knew far more than history has revealed.
The evidence left behind in Peru and Bolivia seems to speak about a forgotten time period of advanced alien astronaut knowledge and technology taught to them by the plumed serpent god. But is there more evidence proving this Anunnaki connection with the Inca? Only by viewing the dramatic mountain landscape of the Andes from an airplane can the truth finally be revealed.
As seen from above, the famous Inca Nazca lines form a large interconnected network of what looks like runways linking ancient airports. We are taught in school that the Inca culture was relatively primitive and only possessed common hand tools, devoid of metallurgy and the wheel. How then could this culture have designed such immense and precisely cut megalithic stones? And why would they need runways if they couldn't fly? Who exactly was utilizing these runways, and what were they transporting? Of all the Nazca lines, one of the most interesting and important pieces of evidence left behind showing a probable ancient Anunnaki connection is found in what's known as the astronaut. The astronaut is portrayed as a tall, extraterrestrial-like being with large eyes and an unusual torso.
Is the plateau above the image an intended landing site to have an encounter with the sky gods? Is this evidence for ancient alien intervention with the Inca in the distant past? How could the Inca have designed these elaborate sculptures without the ability to fly? It seems the only purpose of them is to be viewed from above.
So who exactly were these gods and deities of South America, and could they be responsible for the advanced knowledge and technology seen in the Inca culture? Along with Amaru, the being known as Viracocha is one of the most sacred of all Inca gods.
According to researcher Juan de Betanzos, Inca legends claim that the god Viracocha arose from the bottom of the lake Titicaca during the darkness to bring light. My research links him to the Anunnaki, son of Enlil, also known as Isker-Adad, or Teshub to the Hittite culture in ancient Turkey.
So who exactly is the god known as Viracocha? Perhaps evidence left behind near Lake Titicaca holds the answers. Located at an elevation of almost 13,000 feet near the city of La Paz, Bolivia, we find the ancient megalithic monument known as the Gate of the Sun. Does this spectacular ruin left behind by the Tiwanaku culture represent an actual gate to the gods, as claimed by the native people? The god Viracocha can be seen fiercely guarding its entrance and only allowing those through who have proven themselves worthy.
Digging deeper into the legacy of Viracocha, we find strong similarities back to the Sumerian god known as Isker-Adad, the Hittite storm god. Could this be a lost connection back to the Anunnaki operating in Bolivia?
Viracocha is portrayed by the Inca and Tiwanaku cultures as wearing a crown made of the sun and shooting lightning bolts from his hands. In the legends of Viracocha, it is said that he destroyed the people in a great flood in order to begin a new world. Looking back at the story of the deluge captured in nearly every religion of the world, it becomes clear these Inca stories are more than simple myths.
Is this further evidence of the Enki-Enlil regional clan dispute dating back thousands of years? The symbolism seen with the lightning bolt and eagle can be traced back to countless warring governments, including the Nazis' Germany. Both symbols were affiliated with Enlil and his son Isker-Adad.
Located near the Gate of the Sun in the town of Tiwanaku, Bolivia, we have another famous megalithic site known as Pumapunku. As is seen with many other Incan and Tiwanaku sites around South America, we again find advanced stonework and large blocks carved with razor-sharp edges. Located at 13,000 feet elevation, devoid of trees, one must query how ancient stonemasons constructed such wonders using massive blocks.
What makes the site at Pumapunku so unusual is the spectacular precision and deep cuts shown in many of the sculpted rocks that are beyond what we could create today. Even when compared to other similar megalithic sites found in South America, the amount of detail and intricate craftsmanship seen at Pumapunku is staggering and gives strong evidence to point to the ancient god intervention.
The precision seen in megalithic structures in ruins all across South America reminds modern man that ancient cultures were far more advanced than history reports. Considering the evidence, it should be clear that the Inca possessed a complex understanding of both the world around them and the stars above. Given the vast gold deposits found in Peru, the Inca culture became centered on worshiping the yellow metal and created countless relics to honor the gods. The Spanish Empire greedily sought more loot to plunder and changed their regional focus to South America, specifically Peru, where an endless supply of gold could be found.
Legends of a great city of gold known as El Dorado spread throughout the region after the explorer Pascual de Andragoya returned from a failed expedition into southern Colombia in 1522. The explorer may have returned empty-handed, but the tales he brought back from the native cultures would forever change the future of South America and lead to the eventual collapse of the Incan Empire. With their sights set on conquering the mighty Inca Empire, which greatly outnumbered their Spanish forces in the New World, the Church had to find another war-hardened soldier who could prove himself worthy of such a task. In the year 1524, the Church and Spanish Empire chose a man named Francisco Pizarro to lead the South American conquest. Pizarro had served honorably during the expeditions to Colombia and through the Isthmus of Panama, and had shown he was able to handle himself in the field against native tribes. Pizarro had heard all about the success of Cortéz further north and greatly admired him. Rumors of Inca gold in Peru captivated Pizarro, and he met with King Charles I, who promised him nearly unlimited resources and land if he was successful.
Pizarro's mission was to find the source of gold seen in Mexico and to capture the region in the name of Spain. After several small attempts failed, but did turn up gold, Pizarro becomes determined to achieve success and mounts a large expedition with financial support from the governments of both Panama and Spain.
Francisco Pizarro, along with his brothers and army, landed on the coast of Ecuador in the year 1531 and were called Viracochas by the natives, who mistook them for the light-skinned god. Do we see similarities to the conquering of Mexico with Cortéz being mistaken for Quetzalcoatl and the Incan god confused with Viracocha? It appears great planning went into the conquest of the Americas by Spain, using the indigenous beliefs about their legendary gods to fool them and steal their gold. The deceptive trick worked for Cortéz during the one reed planned return for Quetzalcoatl, and Pizarro used his strategy as well in Peru.
Pizarro and his men pushed inland into the rugged Peruvian highlands, determined to find the source of Inca gold. They established the first Spanish town there, known as San Miguel de Puebla.
Together with Hernando de Soto, Pizarro and 200 soldiers continued to push inland, heading southward towards the Incan capital of Cusco. Pizarro and de Soto arrived at the city of Cajamarca, Peru, on November 15, 1532, and met with the leader of the Inca known as Atahualpa, who happened to be in the region resting and enjoying the thermal baths.
Pizarro met the Incan leader in the central plaza and attempted to convert him to Catholicism. Atahualpa sternly replied to Pizarro, stating, "I will be no man's tributary." This was the signal sought. Rejecting the church doctrine designated one as a legitimate target of subjugation and murder.
Pizarro, frustrated and angry, decides to use the full force of his army to attack the city of Cajamarca the next day in a brutal battle. At dawn, Pizarro gives the signal for a full frontal attack on Atahualpa and his forces.
Pizarro and his men surround Atahualpa and sever the limbs off of those carrying him, toppling the Inca king to the ground. Scrambling in fear, Pizarro seizes Atahualpa and imprisons him. 2,000 Inca warriors are killed in the battle and more than 5,000 taken prisoner, while Pizarro manages to not lose a single man.
Even with odds of 45 to 1 against the Spanish in sheer numbers, the power of guns and horses was no match for the Inca. The remaining Inca forces scattered throughout the surrounding area in confusion. This major blow to the Incan world would lead to an eventual collapse of the Incan Empire.
The Incan king Atahualpa, captured by Pizarro, is held for ransom in a building in the city of Cajamarca. The Spanish, holding the sacred king hostage, fortify the area, but the Inca are far too frightened to try to attack. Pizarro sends terms to the empire to fill the room Atahualpa being held hostage in with gold, and his freedom can be bought.
With low morale, the Incan Empire complies with Pizarro's request and fills the 22 by 17-foot building with priceless gold, artifacts, and relics. At today's gold prices, the value of this treasure would have been astounding, totaling hundreds of millions of dollars. Despite fulfilling the outrageous wishes of the Spanish, Atahualpa is executed anyway.
On February 1533, Pizarro is given reinforcements of an additional 150 men and horses to reach the city of Cajamarca. Pizarro and 500 men advance on the Incan capital of Cusco, Peru, and sweep the city, quickly claiming it for Spain. After taking Cusco, Pizarro writes in a letter to King Charles I, in which he stated, "This city is the greatest and the finest ever seen in this country, or anywhere in the Indies. We can assure your majesty that it is so beautiful and has such fine buildings that it would be remarkable even in Spain.
Pizarro and his armies continued on towards Lima, and eventually the entire Inca Empire would concede victory to the Spanish and collapse in the year 1572. Beyond the hundreds of millions of dollars in gold bullion that was pillaged and stolen from the Inca, the true value of what was really lost was their culture, knowledge, and traditions, now merely an echo of the past in our history books. How many other cultures across the world have suffered the same fate, only to be rediscovered decades later to have their real stories finally told?
Pizarro, now wealthy beyond his dreams, having conquered the whole of the Inca Empire, was later murdered for his wicked past deeds due to his lust for riches and power. In a striking act of irony, Pizarro never got to spend any of his conquered riches and died by the hands of those most loyal to him. The demiurge of greed is often the downfall of most in the end.
Pizarro's statue can still be seen today in downtown Lima, Peru, and it acts as a stark reminder of darker days of the past, when the Enlil-lite Spanish conquistadors subdued yet another plumaged serpent culture, just as Cortéz and Columbus had done before him.
Perhaps the most important question to ask is who was directing the religious crusade that pillaged and destroyed most of the ancient cultures of the Americas? Is there symbolic and physical evidence connecting the Spanish conquistadors' quest for Aztec and Inca gold to the dictates of Enlil?
Evidence for a hidden power struggle may be garnered by analyzing the past through the Anunnaki warring clan perspective filter. Doing so reveals an obvious battle waged between the factions loyal to the eagle and those to the plumed serpent, all across North and South America.
The Roman Catholic Church played a pivotal authoritative role perpetuating the destructive conquest clearly aligned with the Anunnaki Enlil clan. The double-headed eagle was the insignia of Enlil's other son, Ninurta Apollo, who was also clearly involved in the plan.
The evidence presented seems overwhelming and documents further proof for an age-old struggle between Anunnaki clans to both create and teach new civilizations, then to also corrupt and destroy them. In the end, we must ask, which side will be victorious? What could be the intended lessons for mankind witnessing such greed and contempt during the conquest?
Could the Four Corners region and the deserts of the southwestern United States hold the keys to understanding the legend of Amaruca and the true origins of the plumed serpent?
Join us next time for episode 6 as we follow the 4 divine brothers that led to the Mexican state, revisiting the origins of the white place named Aztlan, birthplace for the Toltec and Aztec races,